Hey guys, Matt from Soundrolling.com, and I just wanted to give you this preview, and in fact, I'm giving all the previews of all the videos of the sound chats that I've done so far. And if you like them, it's the first half an hour of all of them. And if you like them, then you can click the annotation. There should be one around here in the video, and you can just sign up for free, and you get them all, including audio versions of all of them and a nice easy area to kind of comment on each of them and continue the conversation, which is what it's all about. So without further ado, enjoy the first half an hour of this sound chat and many others, and I will see you soon. Hello everyone that's kind of joining or watching later on. I'm here with Rob Nokes from Sounddogs.com. So hello, Rob.
Hi there.
Yeah, and basically we're just going to be talking to Rob about Sounddogs.com, about sound effects, maybe getting into some sort of best practices and things like that in terms of sound effects. And he's going to be telling us more about Sounddogs.com. So Rob, if you just kind of start off with, I guess we'll go back to the beginning, like everyone does. I mean, how did you first get started into the sound effects world? It seems like a kind of tight-knit community to kind of get into, in a way, in terms of no one usually sets out to kind of sell sound effects and things. So yeah, just tell us more about that.
I was working at a studio in Toronto called Master's Workshop, and I was an ADR assistant and a slave, basically. I had to clean the studio, clean the ashtrays, that kind of stuff. And then one day, a sound editor by the name of Dan Sexton was making sounds for Scanners 2, which was a kind of a movie where people's heads explode. So he was doing it with synthesizers and sound effects. So that was my first inclination that's what I like doing. Secondly, a supervisor by the name of Peter Tilley invited me out to help him go recording. And that's the spot where I really got hooked on recording sounds and getting into sound effects. And I think it was for an IMAX movie called Green Contract. We were pretending we were apes in the forest, or something like that. So that's how it all started way back in 1990.
Amazing, amazing. And Sound Dogs itself. Just tell us a bit more about that, because that's the first ever online sound effects library.
Yes. Sounddogs started out as a Canadian company around 1990. It was founded by Nelson Ferreira and Greg King. In 1995, Greg King and myself moved to LA and we created Sounddogs USA. And then in 1997, we created a split-off internet company called Sounddogs.com. And so we went online. So traditional libraries like Valentino, like Sound Ideas, Hollywood Edge, they all release CD libraries, but our goal was to release just the sounds online so you can just buy what you need and move on. So we never went into we only lightly went into the packaged products market. That was never our goal or our focus. So, yeah, so we started in 1996 and released in 1997.
Fantastic. And what was the kind of drive behind that? Was that just to make sound effects more accessible to people, or?
It was, there were several small factors in selling the idea to my business partners. One, we were in a service business. Sound design and sound editorial is a service business. And my one partner was looking for an exit strategy because he was about 20 years older than me. And so a publishing business, you actually have a recurring revenue model. So we decided to get into creating a business that was in publishing, and that's where sound effects came in. Secondly, the revenue and the work generated for the website would also benefit the editorial company, so that our sound editors had the best sounds. The third aspect of it was the marketing in the community. So we were trying to reach picture editors and film producers, directors that had been working with, giant companies like Sounddeluxe, Soundstorm, Skywalker, and we were trying to make a name for ourselves and make inroads into that filmmaking community. So early on, we were providing sounds to movies like As Good as It Gets, Jerry Maguire, God, I'm trying to think, Atlantis. So we were working with all these picture editors everywhere. So it really helped in that respect, getting Sounddogs and getting my partners more promotion in the community. And I think the fourth and most important factor in what we were doing was, working with sound effects and building sound effects libraries, which is what I love doing, and recording lots of sound effects. So.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, the total amount is around 700,000 sounds, and you actually have some more on the way, which we can discuss in a sec. But in terms of just your contribution, I believe it's about 250,000 sounds. Is that right?
My recordings are about 140, 150,000. I'm not quite sure. It's a lot. But we do, we just acquired Sounddeluxe, so that'll be another 200,000 plus sound effects. So,
fantastic.
But yeah, it might not sound like a big number, but if you've ever mastered a sound effect, say for example, if you go shoot sound effects for a day, you could easily spend 4 days mastering the recordings. I mean, if you're shooting them like I do, I have for vehicles, I'll have 8 channels on board, and I'll have 3 external mics for the pass-bys and corner turns and things like that. So, you could easily spend 4 to 5 days mastering a 1-day shoot. So the labor really adds up when you get into mastering sound effects. That's the big expense in the library business.
Yeah, and do you have a team that you work with as well? Is there more to Sounddogs than just yourself?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's definitely more. It's a small team. We have 4 people, and we have 2 on the administration and website, like programming, maintenance, and then 2 librarians. So.
And they're just
I do when I'm on the weekends when I have free time. I'm either digitizing F1 betas, digitizing old DATs so I can put them into storage, or scanning documents so that we know how to find stuff. And then when I find when we acquire a new library, I like to know who the good sound effects recordists are. So I'll actually go and find some of their material and master it and learn, oh, this is what this guy does good, this is what this guy does good, etc. So, sometimes I do that on my weekends for fun, just to learn how other people approach recording.
Brilliant. Is that, I assume that's like an ongoing process of people just constantly coming in and kind of pitching their sound libraries to you, because you do purchase sound libraries from independent people, obviously.
Oh yeah, yeah. I would say that most of the people that we purchase from are well-established entities that are, that have very large libraries. What I found is that people who have been doing it for 2 years or 3 years, their libraries aren't substantial enough for the amount of money they're asking for them. So I haven't really bought any small libraries. I think the smallest I bought was maybe 17,000 files, 20,000 files. So, and then also too is there's a lot of downward pressure in the market right now because there's so many new libraries coming out. So it's creating a bit of a commodity issue with the prices.
Yeah, I mean, that 17,000 is no kind of mean feat. So what type of sound effects are you kind of looking for? Because there's obviously vehicles is a big thing that we've seen from your work previously. Are you, apart from vehicles, I guess, what else are you kind of looking for?
The kind of stuff I'm looking for is unique recordings and I'm not interested in household sounds. I'm not interested in toilet flushes. Um, not interested in dog barks. What I'm interested in is unique, well-recorded animals, period piece recordings. Like, say, for example, as a production sound recordist, if you've been on a period piece, you might do a shoot at a palace or a castle, you know. So recordings inside the palace and the castle of people walking or people dancing, like where you have really unique reverbs, locations that are not common. Uh, and I would say places in the world where there's not a lot of sound effects coverage. For example, this summer we spent 2 weeks in Cuba, driving around Cuba, recording all over Cuba. So there's, consequently, just recently I found in the Sounddogs library there's a lot of Cuban recordings. I didn't see how many gigs it was, but so suffice to say, we now have a lot of really good Cuban stuff. But that's kind of the stuff I look for.
Fantastic. And then you must have partners, I guess, all over the world instead of like your Cuban example. I mean, are there
Oh yeah,
literally people everywhere?
yeah. We have people everywhere. We do a television show called Tyrant. It's on the Effects Network. It's a it's a made-up sort of country, like you could think of it like Syria or Jordan in the show. And for that show, we hired our contacts all through the Middle East to record libraries for us. And so when you watch the show, you really get that organic feeling that you're in that location, because we're not faking it with like loop group, like American people um, speaking Arabic. We're using real voices of real people in those locations, so that it really gets that grit of that community.
And in terms of the coverage of those effects that you're obviously getting, it won't necessarily just be like, okay, I just need this type of effect, I just need this type of effect. Would it just be more you get the same person to record, say, the same location in like 5.1 as well as mono, as well as stereo, as well as like give me as much as I can? Or would they
Yeah.
do kind of the editing process a bit before and kind of select, or how does that all work?
Mhm. Well, the best thing to do when you're trying to build a library of a location like that, and you have to educate and teach the recordist, like what to identify what is good. Like, how do you identify what is good? How do you identify what is bad? And my rule of thumb when I'm recording is what's good should be in front of you and what's in bad should be behind you. Um, so that's like, you're just using basic mic technique. And, the people I'm working with, sometimes they're sophisticated and sometimes they're not. So you kind of have to bring it down to the basic levels to make sure you get them well trained. And you just say, these are the kind of things that we want, like, the voices, the kids, uh, if the traffic's unique, and they may not anticipate that their traffic is unique, but if you've ever been to, say, Bangkok or Indonesia, you have the sound of the tuk-tuks, the sounds of the scooters, the sounds of people pushing carts, you know, and so that traffic sounds distinctly different from North American traffic or European traffic, um, or they could have cobblestones, right? So you just tell them to just shoot a lot and shoot long takes. Don't move around. Don't talk. Don't touch yourself and put noise on the recordings. And watch your breathing if you're standing next to a mic, because you don't want that kind of stuff of big nose breaths on the recordings.
The creepy
So
sound.
we've been through it many times. So we kind of go through that kind of education process. So hold on a second.
Oh, we'll just get you back on.
Sorry about that.
Oh, it's all right. Yeah, there you go. So
Let's get you back on.
typically, like, how long would this process kind of take with a person? I mean, you've probably sourced them already through the contacts that you've built up like years after years, but how long is the process kind of taking from we need this type of sound effect to then getting it? And then are they just handing you over kind of the raw files with some metadata and then you're mastering?
The When they do the recording, they just hand us raw files. The expertise in mastering is not something everybody has, and what someone may perceive as something that can't be fixed can be fixed. Whether you're using editing or isotope. So they may not, because they may be too close to the recording, or they may be focused on perfection. And so you really don't want the recordist doing the mastering unless they have that objective experience of doing the mastering themselves. If they've overshot something, say you have 10 shades of gray on one subject, like one recording, do you really want all 10? I'm sure 5 will be fine. And that's another thing we try to teach them, like variation, different perspectives, different angles, different distances, different times of day, different situations, so that when you record something, you don't have the same thing repeating over and over and over again. So we'll generally do the mastering, and then following that, we'll give them tips and advice on how to do it better.
Oh, we're losing you again.
Okay.
You're still there? Oh, you're back. Good. Um, yeah, there's just a question come in just about kind of the levels at which you're recording. Now, obviously, this is going to be completely based on what type of thing you're recording. I saw another interview where you were just talking all about your car recordings and how you record hot but without any limiters. In terms of like ambiances and things like that, let's say um, distant traffic and you're 100 meters away, just getting kind of the feel of it. Are there any kind of rough kind of ballpark figures?
Um, well, in the case of traffic, my favorite traffic recordings, unless you're specifically getting street level traffic for a shot in a movie, my favorite traffic recordings are shot usually on top of buildings pointing down. And the reason is in most movies or TV shows, you have dialogue. And if your Dopplers of your cars are too big, then you have to cut them out, because you want the traffic to kind of have like an even um, level in the track. Um, so I like to shoot from up top, and then you get a much more diffused, less dynamic recording that can sit under the dialogue. In the case of levels, uh, I think generally speaking, I like to record everything as hot as possible, and and then later on, let the sound editor decide where to sit it. I would not, like, say, release you know uh, uh, nature recordings pinned at 0. When you bring it back to your mastering, then you may bring it back to -20. You want to kind of have your levels of your sound effects recordings sit a little bit hotter than where they would sit in an editor's track. So, like, say if an editor would cut a day ambience with crickets and birds at, say, -30, -35, you maybe have your tracks mastered to -20, and then that way when they drop them in, they're they're ballpark level wise, and they just have to lower them a bit. You don't want to print everything super low, because then you're losing sound quality as you get down to -35. But you don't want to have it pinned, because then when the editor drops in the track and the mixer brings it up on the dub stage, it's going to blow everyone's ears out, and you really don't want to do that either.
And I guess
I don't
it's
know
to
if that
combat the kind of background noise issues as well of recording outside and trying to find a kind of quiet spot to be able to maybe isolate some sounds as well.
Well, that's the hardest part of our job, is finding the locations and times of day to record, so that you actually get good sound recordings without planes, without cars, without people, without hammering, without jackhammering, without saws. So it's or in the case, if you're out in nature, it could be guys on ATVs and motorcycles. So that's what makes sound effects recording challenging, is finding those good locations and then having the patience to get a clean, recording where it could take you an hour to get, several perspectives that are clean.
And so, what's probably the most common thing you get kind of asked to do in a way? I mean, I go back to kind of hearing all about kind of the vehicles and stuff. I guess that's kind of like the big play days. Um, is that the kind of main thing that you're going out to record for, say, custom sounds and things, or are you just kind of having a day where you're just going to record? Let's say I'm trying to think of a unique sound that's not like crickets or anything. Um,
Yeah, no one really ever records crickets. Well, I mean, no one ever asks for crickets or stuff like that because they're kind of,
Again,
you can
generic,
cheat
right?
in cricket recording. Um, when we get requested a lot of vehicles because vehicles are very specific, and the productions generally are concerned that people are going to know it was cheated for one or the other. Like, oh, that's not the sound of a Lamborghini, that kind of thing. So vehicles are very common. Military weapons and vehicles are common. But I would say the thing that's most unique is locations and period piece. So if you have to do stuff from, like, the 18th century, um, that's where people are coming to me and saying, hey, I need an 18th century library for, a harbor town or or shipping or a palace, that kind of stuff. So it's really, but then again, we did stuff in Japan for Wolverine. So when he's up in the train station and the platforms and all that kind of stuff, and the trains are going by, we shot that for them, um, and got them the exact locations they wanted so that it was realistic for the movie. So we weren't cheating, some other, like, the Chicago L train or something like
Fantastic. Wow. And so in terms of like trying to capture, I mean, in terms of like a harbor and things, would you just have to go to a private harbor and then just kind of use their ships, or how does that work? Because that seems like a big thing to kind of move around in like a car or a tank, let's say, out to the desert.
Yeah, what we did in the case of those examples is, we found old historic boats and went and recorded them. Like, went to and just got on the boats and recorded them. Then what we did is we kind of looked at the sets, what they had on the sets for the movie or the show, and then we went to um, antique stores and places that sold vintage materials, and we rented all these different things like saws and chains and barrels and carts and all this stuff, and we basically just kind of replicated a town, and then we had 5 people kind of being towns members, you know, making sounds in the town. I shot it from various perspectives and distances, and then we did different, timing so that it wasn't too busy. It was like, we had everything from light to busy. And so we actually recreated a small town to have it feel natural, and so that not every specific had to be cut, because then you would get into very tedious backgrounds cutting process.
Fantastic. And then in terms of, I've had a question about gathering impulse responses, again, just to kind of get a feel for, again, the reverb aspect for, say, if you're then trying to drop in something else that you've done, say, in a studio. Is that quite common?
I did that on Noah, on the movie Noah. We did a lot of sort of nature recording for Noah. And what Craig Hennigan, the sound designer, he said to me is, you know what, like, everybody has clean interior impulse responses, but there's like almost no exterior, you know, responses. So what he asked me to do was go through and every location we recorded outside, record the impulse responses. So what we did is we brought a speaker with us, um, like a big speaker, a big JBL, plugged it in, had 100-foot power cable, and then we used a Tascam recorder to play back the tones, the impulse tones into the speaker. And then as our mics were already set up for sound effects recording, we recorded the impulse tone. So some of them were on mic, some of them were off mic, pointed at different reflections in on the mountains and in the the terrains that we were recording. Now, I didn't use them personally, but so I have no idea, honestly, how they turned out because we just did the recording. I could ask Craig though and get back to you.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting. And then in terms of, again, because you're setting up things at different distances, do you have a kind of a ratio or kind of formula in terms of, uh, let's say traffic, you do 100 feet, 200 feet, 300 feet, and you set all that up, or are you kind of just getting a general feel from it just from experience?
Um, I kind of use the rule. I just do what sounds good. Um, the can I get on top of a building, or can I go down an alley where there's no other close sounds? I'm always, just my brain is always going like, what is good, what is bad, and then I'm trying to then stay away from the bad and focus on the good. So you just problem solving to find the best location, and you get access to that location, um, and what other noise is there. So you put in some effort to find the good location, and then when you find it, you start recording. So I wouldn't say there's any rules in particular because the world is so there's so many factors that go into every location you're recording at. You just have to do the best you can with what's available.
Yeah, fantastic. And then in terms of sort of microphones, you must have a complete warehouse of everything for all sorts of things. But are there types of microphones that you're kind of always taking out? Is there kind of one or two kind of makes or models?
Yeah, I mean, everybody who knows me knows me. I love using the Neumann 191 microphone. I have two 190s that have a little bit more low end response, and then I have three 191s. Um, and the reason I have multiple is because I often shoot like 6-track, um, and then I'll have like an assistant with me recording as well. So I have multiple microphones. And then I was recording on a movie called Glory Road for George Waters, and I had problems with one of the matrix boxes on the 191, and I just thought, God, this is I have to have backups. I can't be recording on a movie or recording for someone and not have backups. So I kind of have too many backups now, but I'm always guaranteed to have at least 4 working mics on every shoot, those 191s. The other mics I like using, mostly for onboards and or like impacts or gun sets. I like the AKG C4000B. For really big, heavy cars, I've been using the Yamaha Subkick for a couple of years now. And if you were to listen to the Subkick by itself, it's a kind of a flabby sound. It doesn't have a lot of dynamics in it, but when you lay it under, your other microphones, it really sounds and adds a lot of weight and low end. That helps the tracks a lot. Um, then I have the Shep CMIT5, the Sennheiser MKH60, I have the MKH 8040, which is the digital mic. So yeah, I have quite a few mics, but my main mic is the Neumann.